Imagine walking through the silent corridors of a samurai castle. The air is thick with incense and the faint crackle of candle flames. Shadows stretch along wooden walls polished by centuries of ritual. Outside, the samurai are remembered as paragons of honor, discipline, and unbreakable loyalty. But behind closed doors, in chambers where the code of Bushidō was whispered rather than displayed, another reality unfolded, one far darker, stranger, and rarely spoken of. What if the very warriors celebrated for their devotion and self-control hid a world of bizarre taboo practices, rituals that blurred the line between loyalty, love, power, and exploitation? Practices so unsettling that later chroniclers tried to erase them, and modern historians often struggle to confront them. Tonight, we step into that shadow. We peel back layers of carefully polished myth to reveal what samurai Japan did not want. Remembered, these were not the noble duels or heroic deaths sung in legend. These were private acts, etched in woodblock prints, whispered in travel diaries, and recorded in rare chronicles, yet later censored, burned, or dismissed as exaggeration. What you are about to hear is not a glorification, but a revelation. A look into how sexuality, power, and violence intertwined in ways that challenge everything we think we know about samurai honor. Some of these accounts will disturb you, others will shock you. All of them force us to ask, how much of history is myth, and how much is the truth we were never meant to see? This is the hidden world of the most bizarre sexual practices of samurai Japan. To understand these practices, we must first step into the world of feudal Japan, a land where the sword ruled not only the battlefield, but the household, and where the samurai stood as the very backbone of society. Bound by the code of Bushidō, these warriors preached loyalty, discipline, and self-restraint. Publicly, they were paragons of honor. Privately, however, cracks began to show, for in the shadows of their castles, indulgence often clashed with the ideals they swore to uphold. Religion played a powerful role in shaping attitudes. Shinto, with its reverence for purity, stood alongside Buddhism, which in some sects tolerated, if not openly accepted, same-sex bonds as natural expressions of devotion and hierarchy. Meanwhile, Confucian ethics, imported from China, insisted on strict morality and order. The result was a society where conflicting teachings created a strange duality: rigid codes in public, fluidity and indulgence in private. Our sources reveal this contradiction. The erotic woodblock prints known as Shunga depicted acts far from the samurai's austere image, portraying fantasies that mocked propriety. Foreign travelers, such as the German physician Engelbert Kempfer, left astonished notes on Japan's hidden customs, recording what local chroniclers dared not. And within the pages of Edo period chronicles, hints of secret relationships and forbidden rituals flicker like candlelight in a darkened room. Life inside the castle walls was strictly ordered, meals timed to the bell, ranks enforced through ritual, silence commanded at night. Yet it was within this silence that whispers spread of secret chambers, of mentors and their young pages, of desires masked as duty. It was here, in the duality of discipline and indulgence, that the bizarre practices of samurai Japan took root. The roots of these practices can be traced to an institution known as Wakashudō, literally, the way of youths. On the surface, it was framed as mentorship, a noble tradition where seasoned samurai would guide adolescent pages, teaching them the art of swordsmanship, poetry, and loyalty. But beneath the language of honor lay a more disturbing reality: relationships in which power and desire blurred, and the line between guidance and exploitation disappeared. The famed 17th century writer Ihara Saikaku, in his work The Great Mirror of Male Love, painted these bonds as deeply romantic, almost poetic. He described warriors pledging devotion to their young companions, binding sex with loyalty. Yet Saikaku was also a storyteller, known for exaggeration and for romanticizing what many contemporaries condemned. His words, therefore, serve both as evidence and as a veil, concealing darker truths. Why did this system take hold? Part of the answer lies in the psychology of the warrior class. Many samurai distrusted women, believing that attachment to them represented weakness or distraction from duty. Male bonds, by contrast, were framed as strengthening loyalty and discipline. But loyalty could be weaponized. A young page, dependent on his master for survival, had little power to resist advances. What was described as bonding often masked coercion. This practice reinforced hierarchy at every level. The elder dominated the youth, the master commanded the page, and submission was reframed as honor. In this distorted logic, sexuality became another weapon in the arsenal of control. What began as mentorship transformed into ritualized subjugation, an early glimpse into the bizarre and troubling world that hid behind samurai honor. What began as mentorship soon spilled into something more insidious. Wakashudō, once justified as training and loyalty, expanded into systems of outright coercion. Young pages, some barely in their teens, were not just guided but commanded, expected to yield to the demands of their masters under the guise of discipline. Humiliation became ritualized, submission recast as proof of obedience. Behind the polished armor and ritual bows, power was being abused in silence. The impact stretched beyond private chambers. Within samurai households, these relationships created webs of influence and dependency. A favored page might rise quickly through the ranks, gaining privileges denied to others, while resentment festered among rivals. In some cases, entire political alliances were brokered or broken through the manipulation of such bonds. A scandal whispered in one domain could ignite intrigue in another, threatening reputations and even sparking vendettas. Records from the Edo period reveal glimpses of this uneasy reality. Shogunate edicts occasionally attempted to curb such practices, issuing restrictions or punishments when scandals grew too loud to ignore. Yet most of the time, silence prevailed. Victims rarely spoke. Bound by loyalty oaths and paralyzed by the fear of dishonor, they carried their scars quietly, their voices erased by shame and hierarchy. And so the contradiction deepened. The samurai, champions of honor in the public eye, presided over private rituals of exploitation. Discipline became a mask behind which indulgence thrived unchecked. Which leads us to the haunting question: what happens when discipline itself becomes a mask for depravity? At the height of samurai indulgence, restraint gave way to excess. The world of private chambers spilled into more public spectacles, whispered rumors of secret brothels catering exclusively to warriors, and even accounts of ritualized gatherings where the lines between loyalty, lust, and humiliation blurred. In these hidden spaces, hierarchy ruled as it always did. The senior commanded, the junior obeyed. What was once framed as mentorship became theater, where the degradation of others was mistaken for proof of dominance. The evidence survives in fragments. Shunga art, those provocative woodblock prints, portrayed acts so extreme they were later banned under Tokugawa censorship. Saikaku's tales embellished them further, mixing truth with satire, but the very fact that such works circulated in samurai circles reveals what was considered both forbidden and enticing. Foreign travelers, like Engelbert Kaempfer, recorded their shock at a society where the most disciplined warriors indulged in practices they would publicly denounce as immoral. This was the paradox of samurai life. Men who claimed to embody honor and self-mastery, indulging in acts that mocked both. Tokugawa edicts occasionally cracked down, yet their very existence proves how widespread these practices had become. The weapon was not always a blade. It was sexuality itself, twisted into a tool of dominance, a silent reminder of who ruled and who submitted. And perhaps here lies the most unsettling parallel. Though centuries separate us from the age of the samurai, the pattern endures. When power concentrates, intimacy is corrupted. Behind walls of ritual and discipline, shadows always linger. History remembers the samurai as warriors of iron discipline, guardians of Bushidō, and paragons of loyalty. Their legends echo with tales of self-sacrifice, duels fought to the death, and unwavering devotion to their lords. Yet in the shadows of those same castles, behind doors barred to the outside world, another story unfolded. One history tried to erase. A story of bizarre rituals, coercion masked as loyalty, and private indulgences that mocked the very ideals the samurai claimed to embody. And so we are left with a haunting contradiction. Were these men truly guardians of discipline or prisoners of their own darkest desires? Was Bushidō a code of honor or a mask worn to conceal appetites no one dared to challenge? Perhaps the truth lies not in one image or the other, but in the uncomfortable tension between them. What is certain is this: power distorts, and intimacy, when weaponized, leaves scars deeper than any blade. These practices remind us that history is not only about the myths we celebrate, but also about the truths we bury, ashamed to confront. To study them is not to glorify them, but to ensure that silence does not become complicity. If this journey into the hidden world of samurai Japan unsettled you, share your thoughts below. Were you surprised by what was revealed? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the discussion as we continue to uncover the darker corners of history together. This video is for educational purposes only. It condemns exploitation and abuse in all forms. The steel of their swords may have rusted, but the shadows of their secrets linger still.